Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All once again. I wanted to do a quick addendum on yesterday's video because there were a couple of actual slides or tweets from Tesla's AI team that I didn't get to in yesterday's. I guess I was sort of thinking about chopping it up. Anyway, hopefully the audio will be better today. I think I've got this thing worked out with my mic. Before I end up leaving, I'm going to end up figuring out how to do this properly. Anyway, if you look back here, you can see that we've got, this was the last tweet from yesterday that I talked about, and of course I will put a link to this up here and at the end of the video if you're interested in it. But they're building state-of-the-art generative modeling techniques which enable them to predict outcomes given past observations in a jointly consistent manner across multiple cameras. Basically, they're able to fuse all of the 8 video cameras together to create something in a generative way. And the really interesting outcome of this was that they are able to generate actual video, which is kind of wild. So they can actually create this stuff. This is synthetic here. The video here is synthetic, not real, at least as far as my understanding of what's going on here. So that means that they are actually able to put in text prompts just like with Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or something, and they're able to say, create a scenario where you have to stay straight in a multi-lane road, or create a scenario where you have to go into the right lane, and it actually generates the video of this, which is a really remarkable outcome. It's not something that Tesla was interested in, of course. It's just something that they discovered was just a byproduct of what they're doing. So anyway, what I want to turn to today is the massive fleet learning here, right? So this is something that people who follow Tesla a lot, of course, know about this, but the models will learn from a huge set of extremely diverse data from the Tesla fleet. And you can see a bunch of things, like this is a tunnel. Here we've got some narrow roads that look a little bit like Belize here. Not quite, but a little bit like that. We've got, Christmas tree lights over here. There, I believe some of these other ones have things like just debris in the road. Yeah, there's a piece of debris in the road right in the center one here. So there's a bunch of very, very interesting cases. I believe this is a fallen tree over here that it's having to deal with. So it's showing the crazy amount of diversity of stuff in the world. And of course, anybody who's driven, I'm sure if you have driven before, you realize that. You're like, wow, the world is full of very, very complex and weird edge cases. And it's extremely important. And the reason why Tesla has pretty much an unassailable lead in this is because nobody else is collecting this quantity and quality of data. So not only do you notice these are just little tiny examples of it, but what we've got here is not just a lot of different scenarios, but really good quality video of those scenarios so that it's able to actually understand what's going on. And again, if we go back, especially these like debris in the road kinds of things, you should just drove right over that. So anyway, but when you see these debris in the road sort of situations, it's got to figure out mostly geometry. Is that voxel of space occupied? Do I need to avoid it? But that's where some sort of ontology or semantics also comes to play, because if it can look at it and say, oh, that's a paper bag or a plastic bag or something, right? One of those, just a Walmart bag that you put stuff in. If it's sort of blowing around and it looks like it doesn't have anything in it, you don't have to get so crazy about avoiding it. You can probably just run over it or pass by it and it will be okay. So semantics actually does come into play with this, but the first thing is, of course, if you don't know what it is, just avoid it. And that's actually very, very important as part of what they're doing here. And then we turn to the last slide here, actually not second to last slide here, sorry. But anyway, these will be trained on enormous amounts of compute. So not only are we talking about having to have a massive amount of data, and I talked about how edge computing is really important to what Tesla is doing. And what I mean by that is that the inference machines, the hardware 3 and hardware 4 in people's cars, is actually doing a lot of the legwork, because it's actually searching through the data that it's taking in as a person is driving, and it is looking for specific instances of things, maybe debris on road or something. And if that happens, so it's doing a lot of compute to see if it's recognizing a situation like that. If and when it does, it sends just that little clip back to the mothership, so that the mothership doesn't have to do nearly as much commute. Now, I'm going to totally forget who said this, but yesterday somebody actually posted, one of the people who did who works at Tesla said that they are somewhere around 99.6% occupied. I think, no, actually maybe 99.7% occupancy. In other words, their compute resources are 99.7% like occupied. They only have a 0.3% idle time. And that 84% of the jobs that are submitted are, important jobs. So it's not stuff that this thing can just work on when it has a chance to. It's stuff that it really needs to do now as soon as possible. So in other words, training the next iteration of a particular part of their neural network stack or the entire neural network stack or something like that, so that Tesla really, really needs as much compute as possible. And so that's where this slide comes into play here. So, trained on extremely large compute. So you can see we are at July 2023, start of Dojo production. Actually, Elon tweeted yesterday, I believe, that Dojo's actually been doing useful work for a couple of months at this point. So it's a little bit slidey as to when they consider the start of Dojo production. But look at the timeline here. We're only looking at a year and 5 months or so, right, to October of 2024. And top 5 in the world is somewhere around 100,000 units or A100 GPUs or something like that. So Dojo equivalent, right? It's not going to be apples to apples. And of course, there's H100s and all sorts of other things. But anyway, we're looking at, by January of 2024, which is just 6 months from now, being top 5 in the world in terms of compute facilities. And then it's not going to just sort of stop and level off at that 100,000. They're actually looking to achieve 300,000 equivalent A100 GPU units of compute by a year and a half, roughly, that sort of time frame. So we're looking at some incredible amount of exaflops, right? I guess they're saying 100 exaflops, 300,000 A100 GPUs, NVIDIA A100 GPUs. So 2 different versions of the thing. But whatever you call that, we're talking about some insanely high amount of compute. That's the kind of thing that will allow Tesla to get even better. The inference engines, hardware 3 and hardware 4 on the car, can actually stay the same if you can train so well that the network is incredibly effective, even with a reduced compute facility on the vehicle itself. And so they can quantize it, they can distill it, they can do things that can make a reduced neural network actually operate in the vehicle if they have enough compute power to really do the training. And remember, some of the training is actually not just for the inference engine, but also for the auto labeler to learn how to auto label. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that really doesn't have to do with being in the car. So again, the more compute that they have, the better. And so it's just incredible to see what their projections are. And from where they are right now, which just looks puny compared to what we've got here, which is an exponential growth in compute. And I expect that past October 2024, they will continue up that trajectory. And as people working at Tesla have said, that what they want is they want more idle time on their computers, on their compute clusters. They want to have those compute clusters sitting around and waiting a lot more than they are. And then, of course, we get to the pitch, which is, join Tesla.com if you're smart enough and if you're awesome enough. It says these video foundation models will serve as the brains of both the car and Optimus robot. Join the Tesla AI team to build the future of robotics. So if you're interested in doing software, if you're interested in the kind of work that is literally going to change the world, if, as Ashok Elaswamy said, you're looking to actually do general artificial intelligence to create something that is generally intelligent and understands the world and has a comprehension of it, that's what Tesla's pitch for you is. And of course, this is all in conjunction with CVPR right now, in which they could do a lot of recruiting at that event as well. It's also a very, very big, visualization compute type of meeting, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so they have, they're doing this recruitment drive in conjunction with that. But I think that what we're looking at here is a really, especially with this compute graph here, is we're looking at an incredible vision of what's going to happen. And again, not pipe dream. They've already got this stuff in place. They're building out Dojo chips. They're purchasing A100s and H100s as fast as they can get a hold of them. So they're looking to become one of the top compute clusters or companies in the world entirely, not just for artificial intelligence with Dojo and everything, but generally speaking. And just a little touch on the end of this, Elon said that Dojo currently is designed specifically, and I don't know if it's just the hardware or the hardware software, but anyway, the current version of it is designed specifically for what Tesla needs, which is doing integrated video at high speed so that they can learn from it as fast as possible and train on it. But he said the next generation, which could be a hardware-software combination, is going to be more general, and that would probably be so. some sort of Dojo 2 would be the thing that they might release as a AI as a service, where a researcher from a university might be able to access that, or for research purposes. Because again, eventually, hopefully, they will have enough compute overhead where they will be sitting on some buffer, and as long as that buffer is relatively free and they're not in some max usage sort of scenario, they can actually then utilize that to give it to researchers at universities and other companies and stuff, and they can pay for that, and they can actually utilize that service themselves. So they can actually make some money out of this eventually if they're working correctly. And that's actually what happened with Amazon's web services. The AWS was originally because they had to build out so much compute in order to handle the Christmas rush, that sort of Black Friday, the couple of weeks that happen around Thanksgiving and after Thanksgiving every year, where people buy a ton of stuff. They had to generate so much compute to do that the rest of the year the computing clusters were just sort of sitting idle because there wasn't that much demand. And that somebody had the bright idea, hey, why don't we rent the services out? And that actually is the biggest moneymaker that Amazon has at this point. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that Tesla, it'll be their biggest moneymaker eventually, because they have so many other things that are big moneymakers. But relatively speaking, this could be something that generates a reasonable amount of income for Tesla. So that's actually another fascinating aspect of this. And if you're a Tesla investor, again, not investment advice, but do your own research and stuff. But it is something definitely to look at and keep in mind. And certainly if you're interested in AI research and stuff and you think you have the chops, you should definitely apply for Tesla AI and see if you can make it. Alrighty, folks, thank you so much for watching this. Hopefully the audio is much cleaner today than it has been in the last couple of videos. If you did enjoy the video, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. If you want to support the channel in any way that you can, including Patreon membership, YouTube channel member, Twitter subscription, just watching the video and liking it, all that stuff is greatly appreciated. And in the meantime, I will see everybody in the next one. Bye-bye.